Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for 12 Meaningful Strategies to Build Connection and Raise Responsible Children. My name is Teresa Fowler, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm excited to be hosting this session tonight. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Amy Cobb. Amy has been formally supporting families since 2006. In 2010, Amy became a certified parent educator with Parents as Teachers, as well as an independent facilitator of Love and Logic. In 2013, she joined the Early Family Services team at Jefferson Center for Mental Health, supporting caregivers whose family dynamic has influenced by kinship care, incarcerated parents, mental health struggles, and behavioral issues. Amy's goal is to meet families where they are by providing knowledge, support, and hope to strengthen the family unit. So today, Amy will be talking about how to best support your children and set them up for success using 12 meaningful strategies. As a reminder, today's presentation, along with all of the presentations from the conference, will be available on demand after the live session for the next 30 days. So before I hand over the mic to Amy, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation and the conference. So I wanted first to acknowledge our sponsors. So we'd like to thank our sponsors and partners who have helped make this event possible today. It's a true community effort to put this together. So thank you very much to Jeffco Public Schools, Rotary Club of Golden, Delta Dental, Westminster Medical Clinic, Source Communication, and Jeffco PTA for all of your support. Next, we'd love to hear from you today during the presentation. So if you have a question at any time for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the Q&A tab, and you should be able to see that at the right hand of your screen. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session, but if we don't have time to get to your question, or if you have more additional questions, we encourage you to attend the Q&A session with our speakers, with all the speakers from the conference tonight from 8:30 to 9. And as I put in the chat box, live Spanish translation service is available for this presentation. So please see the numbers to call. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, I put in an email there, and Jefferson Center is available to help. And finally, last but not least, please fill out the session evaluation by clicking on the link that I'll be putting in the chat towards the end. Your feedback is very important as it helps us to plan for future conferences. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Amy. All right, Amy, over to you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Let me, here we go.
Let's see if we're take a few minutes to share here. I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. I was laughing at the beginning of the, or when we were setting up the title of this, because it's 12 meaningful strategies to build connection and raise responsible children. It was very vague. And so I'm impressed that you all took the leap of faith to come and hear this, because I personally think that there's a lot of great information in here. And so I hope that you find that also. Just in addition to what Teresa said, I also have my infant mental health endorsement, which is super cool. We really talk about how important social emotional development is for young children, and how that spans their life. So that is one of the things that's near and dear. So I love this early childhood. I work with families birth to 10, and it's really a hard place for me. So thank you for joining me. So we're going to jump right in, and we're going to talk a little bit about our learning objectives for today. So we're obviously going to learn 12 parenting strategies. And as I said in the title, hopefully they will be meaningful. That is my goal. Everything that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to tie back to our goals of parenting and also these learning objectives. So we're certainly going to focus on intentional practices to build connection with our children. I think right now is just a very unusual time when we are in pandemic, or we're quarantined, we're homeschooling, we're doing hybrid, we're working from home, we're sometimes going into the office. There's so much we're so fragmented on how we're living our life, and how can we be intentional to build that connection with our kiddos. So we're going to really talk about that. And then we're also going to focus on parenting approaches that encourage independence and responsibility. And of course, I know that that's what all of us want. We want our kids to be independent and responsible so that one day they can grow up and lead the nest and do what they're supposed to do. And to boot, if they're independent and responsible in the in between years before they leave the nest, that is also good for us, right? That means that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it's less work for us as parents. And then finally, hopefully, what these strategies are going to do is help us cultivate mature or different parenting styles so that we're really nurturing our children's self-esteem and confidence. That is really our goal. And I think one of the interesting things, I just heard something recently. I was listening to a talk, and they really talked about how we have to continue to evolve and change as parents. There's no way that we can parent our 6-year-old like we do our 3-year-old, and we certainly can't parent our 10-year-old like we did our 6-year-old. And so it's constantly, it's on us to constantly be looking for new ways to work with our kids and to encourage their independence and the responsibility, and to foster that growth in them. So those are our learning objectives today, and I hope we walk away with being able to say that we accomplished all of that. So the next thing I want to just talk about, I put down some important goals of parenting, and these are really like my goals of parenting. I would imagine that you all have other goals, but for the sake of tonight, let's just kind of focus on these, and then. But I think in order to really get what you need to get out of this is to reflect about what is your goal of parenting. I just think, I know personally, I get up and it's just enough to make it through the day and to do what I'm supposed to be doing, and not even have time to really reflect on, what am I trying to do with my kids? What is my goal? So obviously the first one there is to show our children that they're loved. And I think every parent under the sun would say, of course, that's a goal of parenting. We want our kids to know that they're loved, and I do love them. I love them more than anything, right? I would do anything for them. But then to really reflect on what your actions are, and how we sometimes respond to our kiddos, and sometimes those kiddos that are super challenging, like, do they feel loved, or do they feel like they're always in trouble, or they're never quite measuring up? And how does that look, and how does that impact their self-esteem? So if that's really maybe a place where you are right now, to be able to look at that and say, I really want to build some strategies so that my kiddo knows that they are loved beyond a shadow of a doubt, even though maybe they don't always make the best choices. And how do I do that? So it's one of our goals. The other one is, and I was laughing when I put this down, but for your child to know that you are in charge. And I would say that there's probably half of the room, but half of the people here are saying like, oh yeah, I'm definitely in charge of my house. And then there's the other half that say, oh no, my kids are running the show. And the reality is that our kids need to know that we're in charge, but they also need to know that we're calmly and confidently in charge. So that's definitely one of my goals, is that I want my kiddos to know that I am running the show, and that I can do that in a really calm and respectful way. Another goal of mine is for my children to know that they have a voice. I really want them to speak their opinions and feelings about things. And primarily because I know that if they feel that they can do that at home, then when they go out into the world, they will continue to do that. They will tell their friends what they really think or believe. They won't go along with what everyone is saying. So we definitely want to cultivate that, and we want to encourage that from a very young age, so that then when they do go out into the real world, that they feel like that they do have a voice and that they can speak their mind. And the next one is to demonstrate to your child that they are respected. And I know I run into a lot of families that are like, but I'm the parent and they need to respect me. And I am absolutely 100% on board with that. Where the rub comes in though is that little kids, and I say little kids under the age of 10, their ability to regulate and have self-control is not at peak. It's quite limited at times, particularly if they are frustrated or if they're hungry or if their capacities for that are diminished for any reason. And so what ends up happening is sometimes we expect something from kiddos like respect, calm, respectful tones that maybe they're not quite capable of doing in certain situations. And so it's how do we respond to that? How do we react to that in order to continue to model this is what we expect? So yes, I think it's a wonderful goal of parenting is to demonstrate that we respect our kiddos, but then on the flip side, I also expect that respect back to me. And then also for our child to know that they're an essential member of the family. And I think about that in terms of a couple of different things. One, I think it's important for all family members to contribute to the family. So instead of chores, we talk a little bit more about contributions, right? Everyone has some contributions to the family. And then also to kind of keep everyone apprised of what's going on during the day, particularly with younger kids when they're at the whim of the family schedule. And so to maybe not drop a big change of plans on them if there's any way to avoid that, right? Or if there's ways that you can include your child in the planning of what's going to happen, that makes them feel like they're an essential member of the family. And then obviously our ultimate goal is to raise a productive and thoughtful human being. And I know that for me, when I'm doing things with my kids and or I'm disciplining or I'm trying to teach, I'm really trying to be mindful of like, how does this fit into my goals and how can this help them be that productive, thoughtful human being down the road? So what I'd like to do is I would imagine we've had a few more people trickle in and hopefully then they've been able to take a peek at these goals. And so I'm going to have a quick poll here. And I realize that you might have other goals, but just for the sake of tonight, which goal of parenting really resonates with you the most? So let's do this just to get a feel for where people are. And it should come up. I'm imagining that it will come up and you will get to see the response too. So can you see that?
I cannot on my screen, but I see that you activated the polls.
Okay.
So
Just wondering if it will pop up.
is the poll working? If you all see on the right side of your screen next to chat where it says polls, maybe try to click that. And you should be able to answer the poll there if it doesn't pop up automatically on your screen. Let me see. And you hit launch poll, Amy?
I did, and it said it successfully launched.
Oh, Some people say, yeah, I was able to do it. Hmm. Perfect. It looks like if they click polls on the right side of their screen, they're able to answer it.
Oh, refresh poll results. So hopefully. It's interesting, although I'm not seeing the answers. Oh, here's some. Okay. There we go. I'm seeing the results. Okay, thank you. Now it's all. I actually have to do the poll as well. So now we perfect. Okay. So I think we've got everybody's response. Thank you for everyone's patience as we just were practicing with that a little bit. And we have a clear winner, obviously, the big goal, which is to raise a thoughtful and productive human being. But really, it's really nice because the other one that we have that's right behind that is obviously to show your child that they're loved. And I think that's an amazing goal. I just, yeah, there's a lot that goes on in this world where, we have to keep that mindful, or else it's pretty easy to just kind of get caught up in everything that's going on. And then we have, um, for your child to know that they have a voice, we have almost 20% people on that. And then also for your child to know that they're an essential member of the family. So, and that was 13%. So it's great. Thank you for participating. I love that. And I will use that information to kind of weave through as we're going through the webinar. So the next slide, what I'd like to do is share a quote that I love from Janet Lansbury, she was an actress, and now she's an author of many, many good parenting books. One is called No Bad Kids. And then the other one more recently is Elevating Child Care, A Guide to Respectful Parenting. But one of the things when I'm working with families is I really am focused on, what is the root. So one of the things I say often is all behavior is communication. So what is my child trying to tell me? And when I say child, I really mean any human being under the age of 18 years old, really. And really for everybody. I mean, you could even relate that to your partner, your spouse, or whatever. You could say, by their behavior, what are they trying to tell me? And so, but particularly with little kids, is I just don't believe that there are any bad kids. And Janet says it so nicely when she says, there are no bad kids, just impressionable, conflicted young people wrestling with impulses and emotions, trying to communicate their feelings and needs the only way they know how. And the reality is that our kiddos have so many needs and wants and things, and they just don't have the maturity and the social graces to always do it flawlessly. And so sometimes they kind of, bull in the china shop. They just kind of make it happen. Particularly like kiddos, if they have somebody that's in their space, they may just, impulsively kind of push them out of their way. And it's not because they're a bad kid, it's because they need to learn a better way. And so I just love this quote. So as we're walking through these things, I want us all to kind of think about, how can I reframe some of my children's behavior and get them to, and think to myself, okay, what are they trying to communicate? What are they trying to tell me? All right. Okay. So before we jump in, we're going to do one more poll. This one's super easy now that we know it. But I just would like to know what age kiddos we have in our group today, so that can also influence the direction that I maybe skew some of the information. So I'm going to launch this poll. It's been successfully published. There's really just two answers. Either your children are kind of 2 to 6 or 6 plus. And think about, I'm sure many of you have multiple children. Just think about the child that maybe brought you here today, like the child that you were thinking like, oh, this is the one that I really would like some new strategies for. So if you can think about that when you hit your when you're submitting, that would be great. Okay, awesome. So we're at 66% of you has 6+, and then a third of you have little or ones, preschool or kindergarten age, so 2 to 6. So that's great. I will use that information and again weave that as I'm talking about some of these different strategies and try and give examples of both of them, of both age groups. All right. Okay, so here is our meaningful, significant, purposeful, valuable strategies. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to walk through these one by one with examples, and then also like how they tie into our goals as parenting, how they tie into our learning objectives, and you know, if you have questions during the time, this would be an opportunity where you could jump in and ask a question. So what I would recommend, if you have your phone, maybe take a picture of this so that you have it. I believe that they sent out some handouts to all the participants that registered, and I will also be referring to some of those handouts with some of the techniques as we're going through. All right. Just give everyone a minute to see that and take a picture, and then we're going to move right on. Okay. All right. So I kind of broke these down into two categories. One is meaningful and connected, and then the other one is connected and building responsibility. So our first technique or strategy, if you will, it's really around building this connection. And one of the things that we know is that research shows that children who are really connected to their caregivers and feel like these caregivers are there to support them and encourage them, that and encourage them through like emotional regulation and healthy coping mechanisms and things like that, that those are the kids that tend to do it better in school. They tend to do better with relationships. They tend to navigate social situations a little bit better. And so it's really important, like a third of you guys have kiddos, you know, in this lower age range. Like now is the time to really be talking about emotions and connection and things like that with them. So the first strategy that we have is really specifically and positively praising the behaviors you wish to see. I was in a meeting the other day and somebody said, you know, it's kind of like when you're watering your garden, and if you're over there watering and putting sun on all the weeds, and you're not putting water and sun on the flowers, guess what's going to grow? It's going to be the weeds. And I was like, oh, that's such a nice way to kind of visualize that. So one of the things that we know about kiddos, particularly in this kind of under 10 years old, is that their cognitive development is what we would call kind of concrete operational. So they're pretty literal in their approach and their interpretation of the world. So a lot of times our gray, like things like we'll say, oh, in a few minutes, or if you're good, or maybe, or, you know, if things go well, you know, like we try and throw those things out there, and kids don't really know what to do with that. That it's so vague that they don't have the schema for that. They don't have the life experiences yet to be able to really make that a concrete, you know, to be able to put something concrete with that. So on two things with this specifically and positively praising the behaviors, we also want to specifically label the behaviors you need to see. So for instance, if you're going to the store and you know that your child has a tendency to wander up and down, we need to not walk into the store and say, okay, I need you to be good. What we need to say is, okay, I need you to hold my hand, or I need you to hold on to the cart, or I need you to stay where I can see you. And even that might be a little too broad, right? And if you're at a park and you say, well, I need you to stay where I can see you, maybe you have to play that out with them. So you can say, okay, go over and stand by the tree. Can I see you there? Can I not see you there? And that would be like helping them gain some parameters around that expectation. And then on the flip side, I think it's really important to specifically and positively praise the behaviors. So anything that's, if you have siblings and you have a child that is really helpful, instead of just saying, oh, you're a good big brother, to be able to really specifically and positively say, you did such a nice job helping with your baby brother today. I loved how you brought me a diaper, right? And that you're very specifically and positively praising that, because I can guarantee you that child will then, I mean, even if it's a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, that child will say, okay, bing, I know exactly what I need to do to have that praise. I know exactly what mom or dad is expecting of me. So it's those very specific ways to praise your child is great. Another good example is, I know with younger kids, sometimes it's hard to for them to share. And so anytime that they spontaneously share, and or if you share with them, point it out and be like, oh, look at that, we're sharing. And and then if they do share with an older brother, or an older brother shares with them, use that opportunity to say, wow, we are just doing a really good job sharing in this family, because then that builds the tape of, oh, I can share, I can do that. Again, but it has to be very concrete for these kiddos to be able to wrap their head around it. Um, and then the next one is spending quality time. And as I said, not necessarily quantity, with your child every day, and get outside every day. I know we've had kind of a horrific summer between COVID and the fires, but really getting outside every day with our kids, and having them have that opportunity to burn off some of that energy is so critical to good behavior, right? Um, but I attached, so I don't know if you guys can see that, but there is a website there. But hopefully when you registered for this, there was a handout that was sent to you, and it's from the CDC, and it talks about special playtime. And I just want to spend a couple minutes with this. And this is really, I would say, for every child that's under your roof. So even if you have a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, obviously you're not going to be doing special playtime, but you could figure out special time, even if it's just hanging out and cooking together, or just a moment when you're in the kitchen and they're maybe working on some homework, that you're not multitasking 100 things, like listening to the news and checking your email and cooking dinner, where they feel like you're approachable. But for the littler kids, for 10 and under, what they recommend is literally on the handout, it says 5 to 10 minutes a day. And I would encourage you that if you could carve out 15 minutes a day, 10 to 15 minutes a day, and label it. Again, that very literal, so the kids can really have that information, or know what's coming up, and it's very concrete. Like, wow, today after school, we're going to have some special time. And what that special time looks like is, it's an opportunity where the kids get to play what they want to play. And we're spending that time to enter into their world. And so, like for a 7-year-old, to go play Legos with them, or this would not be on the top of my fan list, but if you'll be live soon, it says.
Okay, it's telling me we're live.
Okay, me too. And hopefully.
Um, Let's see if you can hear us, if anyone can type in the chat and let us know if it's broadcasting for you.
Oh, I see you. Yay. Great. Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll just hopefully get, okay. Looks like we're back online here. I don't know what's.
Yeah, everyone's saying yes, so.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Good. Well, we'll just keep moving on here. So hopefully you all get this handout about the special playtime. And I think I was just saying that there are a couple rules around special playtime. And it really is about letting your child lead the play. It's about describing what your child is doing. It's not a time for like, hey, what shape is this or what color is this? It really is more about just letting them lead the play and connecting with them in their world. And then there's also some little cautions to make sure that we're not, we don't criticize during this time, and that we let some minor misbehaviors kind of go. And one of the things that I found is that if, literally, if 10 minutes is too much, then make it 8 minutes. If 10 minutes doesn't seem enough and, you guys are doing great, then make it 15 minutes. There's no right or wrong about it. So just, you can tailor it to yourself, but it is incredibly powerful in building that connection with your kiddo. And particularly if you're gone during the day because you're going to work or they're gone to school, it is a wonderful time to reconnect, come back. And I promise you, like, evenings will be so much more, they'll just calmer and it will be more meaningful and more connected. Okay, so that is number 2. So specifically and positively praise the behaviors you wish to see, and then spend quality time with your kiddo. So here are the next 3, and I lumped all these together so that we could just, I'm gonna kind of flow through them. So the first one is one of my favorites. It's be sad and not mad. And I know a lot of people are probably like, what does that mean? And it means a couple of different things. First off, it means if we can be sad for our kiddos when things don't go the way that they want them to go, or if they make a bad choice. So, for instance, like, let's say our 3rd grader decides to go to school in shorts, and it's going to snow, and you said, hey, it's going to snow, and they're like, I'm fine. So they go to school and then they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I was so cold all day today. Can we be sad in that moment? Be like, oh man, that stinks. I'm sorry that happened to you. And just be sad for them in their circumstance and not mad. Because I know that the inclination is to say, well, I told you so. But the reality is that if we can figure out whose problem is this, is it mine or is it the kids? And if it's the kids' problem, then just to be sad and sit with them in that is super connecting. But most of us grew up with, when our kids mess up, we need to get mad at them so that they know they messed up. And I believe that kiddos really, like, if they're cold, they're going to learn that lesson. And I would much rather have them learn that lesson with dignity and have our connection intact than for them to walk away from that feeling, like, okay, I made a bad decision and now my mom or dad or whoever caregiver is mad at me. It's so powerful it's okay to be sad for kids when it's their choice and then they make a bad choice and then they can live with the consequences. I do understand that there's a lot of situations where the kiddo makes a bad decision that impacts my life. And those are times that we're going to have to, you're going to have to deal with that. You can't be like, oh, well, I'm sad, not mad. I get that. There's going to be probably some frustration around that. But I would say 8 times out of 10, if you can take the mad and the frustration out of all of those situations that really just affect them, then you have a lot more leg to stand on when it does impact you, because then you can say, you know what, this is such a bummer, but the mornings are not going well. I'm late to work, you're late to school, and we need to figure out a different way of doing mornings because this isn't working. And I don't know that there's any amount of mad or frustration that's going to solve that problem more than cooperation and being like, I'm bummed for you. I don't want you to be late to school because then you miss out in the morning. I miss out at work. My boss is mad at me, whatever it is. But then you're having a conversation about it. So we really talk about kind of that empathy, right? Like, can we connect with empathy first? Can we be sad? Another great example, let's say a couple kiddos you guys go and buy ice cream for the family, and you have a couple of rambunctious kids, and they're chasing each other with their ice cream cone, and you say, hey guys, you better calm down. You're going to drop your ice cream cone. And lo and behold, one does. In that moment, can you feel like what it feels like to kind of screw up? Like, I certainly have been holding my cell phone with too many things in my hands, and I dropped my cell phone. And the last thing I really want anyone to say to me is like, well, told you so, or you shouldn't have been carrying so much, or, whatever. And so if we can give that same respect and that same kind of approach to our kiddos and be like, oh man, you dropped your ice cream cone. And they're going to probably say, buy me another one. And you can be, you can say, oh man, we're only buying one ice cream cone per kid tonight, and then if they have money, then maybe you can bring that problem back to them and say, you've got some money saved. If you want to buy another ice cream cone, you can, right? And that's a very logical solution to the problem. And we don't have to be mad during any of that. We can be really just sad for them and their situation, and then helpful in trying to problem solve it. And then another kind of which piggybacks on that is this: be curious and not critical. It's another one of my favorite little sayings, is that there's oftentimes that kids will come home from school or whatever, a school or a play date or sports, and they'll say, oh, I got in trouble today because I pushed my friend. And I think our first inclination usually is to be like, well, why'd you do that? You know better than that. Or, or if they just are really vague and say, oh, I got in trouble at school. Well, what'd you do this time? And all of those things are pretty critical. And albeit maybe true, like maybe your child has a pattern of getting in trouble. But if we could shift that a little bit and say, oh man, I wonder what happened. I wonder why you pushed your friend today. And use some of this language around I wonder and I notice. And that helps them open their heart and their ears to engage in conversations with you. And so I love, thinking about that when around kids, and like even schoolwork. If the schoolwork didn't get done, or they got a bad grade, and it's pretty easy to say, well, you didn't study enough, and it's like, oh, I wonder what was going on for you in this project. And it's hard. It's a shift. It's a change in how we respond and react to our kiddos, but it really does open that door of connection, and it helps you learn to not learn. It helps you to be a better mentor and teacher for your kids, right? To discipline them, which is really to teach them and to guide them. But we really need that connection in order to do that. And then another technique along this is this: say what you see. And again, pretty simple, but not super intuitive. So, if you have a child that is, throwing their toys, or maybe an older child that's chucked their pen across the room because they're having a hard time doing math, or maybe they chuck their book across the room, right? Like, we don't want that behavior, but at first we have to connect with them in order to be able to teach them a better way of handling or having a better coping skill of when they're frustrated. So if it's a smaller child and they're, like just they're banging, something because they can't get it to work, even to say, wow, I see that you're frustrated. I see that this is hard for you. And for an older child, you can say, oh, I see that this subject is giving you trouble today. And then how can I help? And then once everyone calms down, when everyone's nervous system is maybe a little bit more regulated, we can have the discussion about, okay, but it's not cool to chuck your book, or it's not okay to throw your pen across, right? That's when you can have those learning moments, not in the moment. But if a child is already upset about homework, or not being able to, get a like if they're working on Legos or something and then they just like push it over, that's not the time to give the lecture because their brain isn't open to receiving it, or their heart isn't. And so to be able to help them recognize what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, and then um, be able to go into the learning and the teaching. So say what you see is really powerful also. So all three of those, I think they're easy to remember relatively, not always easy to implement. But again, just if you start making that a focus, like I'm just going to be more curious with my kiddo. I'm going to be asking more questions, and not say as many statements. And the use of I wonder and I notice are beautiful ways to open some of those conversations. So before we walk into our next section, I have this quote that I love, if I can get it. Oh, here we are. That little people are just overwhelmed by big emotions. And it's our job really to share our calm and not join in their chaos. And again, like such a, I think everyone would say, well, of course, yeah. I mean, that's our job, right? But how often do we let our kids kind of pull us into their chaos, and what they really need from us is to be their calm, their rock. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotions. And one of the things that we know is that children learn how to interpret the world from their caregivers and from their experiences. And so they're watching you to see how you handle conflict. They're watching you to see how you handle frustrating situations. They're watching you to see how you handle their big emotions, and they're going to interpret and make um, decisions about, okay, is this a safe place for me to have a big emotion, or is it something that's I'm better off keeping it inside because everyone feels uncomfortable when I do that. And we know that people that, you know, we have generations of people that tap down their emotions that aren't given good coping skills, and then we end up with problems. There's sometimes substance use disorders, or there's eating disorders, there's shopping disorders, there's gambling, there's all sorts of things of ways that we learn to cope with things that are uncomfortable. And so one of the best things that we can do for our little kids, and again, under, all ages, but it's certainly much easier when they're, 10 years and younger, is to be their emotional coach, is to kind of help them learn to start to identify what these feelings are. And, we're super great at happy, mad, sad, glad, happy, mad, sad, glad, and probably angry, right? We're really good at those. But what's really fascinating is, particularly in younger children, they're, like excitedness and then nervousness feels very much the same in their body. And so sometimes it takes us to kind of help them really identify situations and scenarios where maybe they're nervous, but then another time where really they're excited. And so that helps them begin to put a schema around what they're feeling and then what the appropriate behavior is around that. And the other thing that's interesting about emotional coaching is that I would wager to bet that most of us didn't have that growing up. So it is definitely one of those areas that it's going to feel probably pretty clunky and uncomfortable. But this is a great time to use that, say what you see. And wow, I see that you're feeling frustrated right now. And what's really interesting is like with older kids, like if let's say they have an older kid that maybe they have a friend over and that friend destroys something that they made, or they're not playing the way that they want them to play or whatever. And that child may come to you and say, I'm mad at my friend, Jonathan, and it's true. They probably are mad. But if you can wonder with them and say, tell me a little bit more about what happened, then you begin to tease out some of these things that, actually maybe your child felt disrespected by them because they built this really cool Lego thing and the friend broke it. So yeah, so the child's going to say, I was mad, which they are mad, but the underlying emotion there is really, I didn't feel respected. Like I created this really cool thing and then they just destroyed it like it didn't mean anything. Or they might have a friend that doesn't want to play with them and the way that they want to play. And they may say, that makes me mad. Well, I wonder why that makes them mad. It might make them mad because they feel like their ideas aren't being valued or validated. So there's a lot that, so they might feel incompetent, right, in that moment, or if somebody says, that's a stupid game, I don't want to play that game, right? Then this child might feel incompetent or disconnected from their friend because they're not engaging in the same way. So really just trying to figure out a little bit more about what's going on for that child. And really, again, like up until 10, 11, 12 years old, they're having complex interactions with people. And it's not just happy, mad, sad, glad. There's a lot of other things that are going on. And there's wonderful, I didn't attach them to this, but you can Google emotion charts and start to verse yourself on all the different emotions. There's so many of them out there. And the chart that I look at a lot has like 35 on it. And it's everything from jealousy to loneliness to boredom to frustration to anxious to incompetent to, they go on. And so just really being aware of all the different things that our kiddos feel every day can really help them get a handle on that. And then the next one is delight in your child. And I think all of us would say, well, of course we delight in our child. But I also want to just think about, I think it's really easy to delight in our younger children when they're, learning those first steps and their first words and they're going to school for the first time. And how often do we delight in our 8-year-olds and our 9-year-olds and our 10-year-olds? And particularly when life is busy, because sometimes they do things kind of clunky and it feels, or maybe they're pushing back because they really need some control in their life because everything feels like it's spinning out of control. And our initial response is to say, wow, they're really defiant right now. Versus kind of maybe reframing that and saying, wow, they're really being persistent. They're trying to tell me exactly what they need. And when we start reframing some of those not so positive behaviors, it helps us just really see some of the just natural cool things about our kids that hopefully we can learn to delight in those. And just watching our kids, just do things, if they're building a Lego thing that is just, phenomenal, and they're taking the time to really read the instructions and follow it. Like, can we just pull that out and say, oh my goodness, I love how you just spent, you were just so focused, and you really were passionate about that, and that is so cool. And I loved watching you do that. I actually was listening to another webinar one time, and one of the best things you can say to your kiddos, particularly like in sports or something like that, is to say, I just love watching you play this game or whatever it is. Because you can just see their enthusiasm and their excitement. And it really means a lot to kids. So that delight really, it builds attachment, and then we know that attachment builds confidence, and then confidence builds better behavior, and it really is just a trickle down effect. So find ways to delight in your children each and every day. It's a great one. All right, so now we're going to move on to fostering connection and responsibility. And again, I lumped all these together, but I'm going to just talk about them one by one, and then hopefully we'll weave them in and out. But the use of timers, and one of the reasons why I think the use of timers is so important is it keeps us accountable, and it also keeps our kiddos accountable. So for younger kids, it helps them learn kind of the value of time and what time is, but it also helps their little literal brains kind of wrap their head around something. So one way I like to use timers around, particularly for adults, is if there's something going on. I mean, you can use them for the special time, but if there's something going on and your child is saying, mom, 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 or dad, 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 you can say, you know what, and it's okay. I think kids need to wait, and they can wait, but I need to finish this, and it's going to take me 10 minutes. And I'm going to set a timer. And when the timer goes off, then I can help you. We can have this conversation or whatever. And it's not going to go smoothly the first few times, but what you are is you're building up that your words, that what you mean you say. And so if you say, I will be with you in 10 minutes, you set a timer for 10 minutes. As soon as that 10-minute timer goes off, you attend to your child. And you start building that neural pathway of, okay, so now when I don't have a timer and I can say, hey, buddy, I need 5 minutes, they'll go, okay, because mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever, they're good for their word. They always follow through. They always, if they tell me 10 minutes, they mean 10 minutes. The other use of timers is really helpful around transitions. And so if you have kiddos that, particularly like getting ready at night, they're turning off the TV, or they're done playing video games, or even around homework, to be able to give them that time. And I would encourage, which I'm going to flow right into this gift choices, is to give them a choice around that, to be able to say, hey, we need to start wrapping up the night. Do you want to finish watching TV in 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Or, something like that. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say 10 minutes. And you can say, oh, that's so smart, because 10 minutes is more than 5. So I can tell you're using your noggin, right? So again, you're positively and specifically praising your child. And then you set a timer. And when the timer goes off, you go, oh, 10 minutes is up, and it's time to move on. And again, like, it's not going to necessarily go like, okay, mom, and they just walk away. But then you have that backup to be able to say, oh, I know we said 10 minutes, and that's what it's going to be. And we're going to talk about how we don't argue with our kids as one of the last ones. So I'll weave that back in there. So if your kids do start to whine and argue with you, you can have a couple of tools around that. But timers are really good because they're concrete. They really help kids kind of get a grasp of what's going on. And I also think it helps keeps us honest. So if you're leaving a park, you set a timer, and then you're like, okay, because I know I've said, hey, we're going to leave the park in 10 minutes. And then guess what? 30 minutes goes by because I get talking with someone, or the kids get playing, and then I don't follow through. And that isn't good for anybody. That doesn't teach the children that, that my word has actions behind it. So timers are really, really powerful and good. And get the kids involved. Have them push the start button so that they are fully vested in that whole thing. One of the handouts that I sent you is on choices. And really choices are, we give choices for lots of different reasons, but one of the reasons is for them to practice making decisions. Another reason that we give choices is so that they know that we value what they have to say. But there are some rules around giving choices. We don't want to give choices that impact the whole rest of the family. So, if you're going to have grandma and grandpa over for dinner, you don't want to give your kid the choice to say, hey, do we want mac and cheese or pizza, if that's not what you want to serve for the whole party, right? For grandma and grandpa and everyone else. But if it's just you guys hanging out for dinner and you don't really care, what you're going to eat, yeah, if you could say, hey, do you want chicken nuggets or pizza tonight, and let them choose, I think that's awesome. If there's choices around vegetables, if there's choices around, drinks, if, do you want milk or water? If juice isn't an option, you don't give them that option. And if they say they want juice, you just go back and say the choice is milk or water. And if they don't choose, then you just say, oh, looks like milk tonight. And you just put it on their, at their place. And again, they'll probably whine and argue with you, which we will follow up with here in just a few minutes. So, but choices are really important. We also don't want to overwhelm our kiddos with too many choices, meaning like too many options in one. For little kids, like under the age of 6, we probably just want to do 2 choices. For older kids, you could maybe give a few more choices. And or if an older child says, well, actually, what I'd really like is, if you say, hey, do you guys want hot dogs or hamburgers tonight? And they're like, actually, I'd really like mac and cheese. And you're like, yeah, I'm good with that. Then give them that choice, right? Like, yeah, that was a good thinking. I didn't even think of that as an option. So again, praise their good thinking skills and allow them to have that choice if they need it. There's lots of examples of choices on that handout. The other thing that it's funny, I have teachers and I've been giving choices for their entire life. And I notice I still do that. Like I'll say, I was driving with my daughter the other day and I said, hey, do you think we should take I-25 or do you think we should go, whatever? And because she's driving now, so I want her thinking about different ways to drive places. So, yeah, there's just lots of ways to involve your kiddos with choices all the way up until age 18. And obviously, your choices for little kids are little things that just impact them. And then as the kids get older, you start giving them more choices. And then the other thing, so I have this in here, offer age appropriate activities. And the reason why that fosters responsibility is that I think what happens is, particularly if you have multiple siblings, is that the younger kids tend to just get lumped in with the older ones. And it's really important for our children to feel the sense of mastery over what they can do. And so for little kids, if they don't have age appropriate activities and they're kind of always like trying to keep up with the older brother or sister, it can impact their confidence and their desire to keep trying new things because everything is so hard for them. So it's really important, and you can Google stuff and say, what should my 8 to 10-year-old should be doing right now, and what should my 6-year-old be doing, and what are good games. We don't want, like around 7 or 8 years old, the kids can start playing Monopoly, but we don't really want to put our 5-year-old in that situation where they're messing up the board game. It's frustrating and it's not building that confidence. So really, this isn't like one of my, like the most important one, but I think it's definitely worth noting that it is important to make sure that our kiddos have age appropriate activities and books so that they can feel confident in where they are developmentally. All right, we'll keep moving on here. So this is also a big one. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this, which is fostering connection and responsibility through patience, self-control, and problem solving. So you actually got a 3-for-1 there. But it's really, I love this quote when I saw it. It says, patience is not simply the ability to wait. It's how we behave while we're waiting. And I just love that. And little kids have such a hard time waiting, and it's not very pretty sometimes. And when I say little kids, like all the way up to teenagers, like they just don't have that patience. And I would say that sometimes we as the parents don't have that patience, right? So how can we reflect on how do we handle situations that are trying our patience, right? Are we modeling um, those times to be able to say, wow, this is a really long line and I'm feeling impatient right now, but let's play I Spy and help our kiddos figure out productive, healthy coping mechanisms during those times. Um, I've thought a lot about this and about when I was growing up. This is going to be, we had to walk uphill both ways. No, I'm just kidding. But what we did have to do is there were a lot of times that we had to wait. We had to wait for cartoons on Saturday morning. We had to wait if we called our friend and the line was busy. We had to hang up and we had to remember to call our friend back. If we were taking pictures, we had to take the pictures and then mail them in or drop them off, and it usually was a week or two to get them back. And then 9 times out of 10, like only 2 pictures out of the 28 turned out good. So there's a lot of things in our life today that just don't lend itself to patience. And so this is why I put this in here as one of our strategies: is how do we help our children practice patience? And so another thing that you can do with that is anytime that they are being patient, we're positively and specifically recognizing that. We're noticing how patient they're being, because we want to build that confidence level in them that I can be patient, I can wait. Um, the other piece about self control, and kind of goes along with the patience thing, but little kids are really impulsive, and that's just the way they are. Some kids are more impulsive than other kids. And so the more that we can notice that in them, but then also praise them when they are being, when they take that deep breath and they wait. In a sibling situation, it's that moment when they clench their fist, but they don't actually hit. They're exhibiting self-control, and those are those moments to actually really cue into and to say, oh my goodness, you completely had self-control there. I could see what was going on, but you didn't do it. High five, hair tussle, lots of eye contact, and really some really good praise around that. So they're beginning to get that self-control, but they really need help recognizing times that they times that they have done it, and then ways to practice self-control. So I have a mom that I've worked with for years, and she'll tell her kiddos, she goes, okay, we're practicing our patience today. And I just love that language, because it really is a practice, and it's even a practice for us as adults, right? Like I was having computer problems all day today, and I literally had to take those deep breaths. And it's amazing when you start doing that and your kids are watching you, and then all of a sudden you see them take that deep breath. It's such a wonderful feeling. Then the other piece that I want to just talk a little bit about problem solving. So one of the things that's interesting about development is that as far as problem solving goes, we as adults, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed. So a lot of times we will problem solve in our brain. Like if you are a runner, or if you can sit and get quiet, you can think about, how am I going to solve this problem? Or sometimes we dream about it. We have all these different ways that we work on problem solving. But kiddos don't have all those internal dialogues and mechanisms available to them from a cognitive standpoint. So having us help them learn how to problem solve and even model how we're problem solving. So if you have a situation at work, and your kid's a little bit older, and you can say, wow, I had to really think this through, and this is how I thought it through. Not so much as like, oh, I'm going to teach you something now, but just as a moment of sharing, like, wow, this was kind of a tough thing that I had to figure out. And I kind of thought about this way and I thought about that way. And then I eventually landed on this and it worked. Um, that just helping kids put some context to how do we problem solve. The other thing that's super awesome is really for a child that's 2 or 3 and above, um, let them problem solve, right? So, for you to be able to connect with them and like, let's take that ice cream cone example before, and you're just like, man, that's such a bummer that you lost your ice cream cone. Like, what do you want to do? And inevitably they'll probably say, well, I want you to, buy me a new one. And it's like, oh man, I'm only buying one ice cream cone per kid tonight. What else could you do? And it's like, and I might scrape together some money, to buy another one. Oh, you could totally do that. Yeah, right. And so you're just guiding them through that thinking process. If you have a little kid, a 4 or 5-year-old that has a toy that's broken, then maybe they broke it because they weren't playing nicely with it. Again, like problem solve. How could you get another one of these? I'm not buying another one, but they've got birthday, they've got, a holiday, Christmas or Hanukkah or Easter or, Valentine's Day. There's all sorts of things coming up. So how could you help them kind of think about different ways of getting that toy again? Or maybe they could do some chores and earn some money. And that would be another great way. So this problem solving, when we kind of step out of this, I need to be mad, and I step into, okay, how can I help my child learn something from this? How can I help them learn to be a good problem solver? That's when all of a sudden you start to raise kids that are really productive, thoughtful human beings because they've been doing it their whole life. So that's great. Okay, we just got one more, and then we're going to talk about don't arguing, and then we're going to have a few minutes for some questions if we have any. So, I'm sorry.
We have one question so far.
Okay.
So you're good.
So one of the things that our kids love to do is to kind of bait us into some arguing. And there's several reasons why kids do that. I think part of it is that they want to feel heard and valued. And I think they also want some control. And particularly if we set a limit with them, we say, no, we're not doing that. Then normally what they're going to do is they're going to come and try and, because now you've taken the control away, right? Like you've said, nope, we're not doing that. And so now they're feeling like, oh, I lost some control here. So now I'm going to try and take back some control in really maybe an inappropriate or an immature way. And so what they'll do is they'll try and start baiting you into things like, well, it's not fair. You never let me do anything. Everybody else gets to do something. And so one of the recommendations in the parenting world is to just kind of just use a one-liner that says, I know, I bet this feels hard, or I love you too much to argue about that, or you've asked, I've answered. And again, like just not engaging in a whole bunch of dialogue around it. You can say like, I hear ya. Yep, I know this is tough, but it's so unfair. And it's like, I get it. Like I can understand where they're, or like empathize where they're coming from, but that does not mean that I have to give in, or my limit, that I don't have to hold my limit. And the reality is that the younger you can start this, it's awesome. The younger you can start this, the quicker kids pick up on it, and they realize, and they're not as sophisticated, right? Like you try and start doing this with a 10-year-old, and they'll pull out all the stops. Like they will just keep arguing till the cows come home. So so you really got to be able to hold your ground and just be like, I know it's hard. And sometimes you might even have to say, you know what, honey, I am done talking about this now. And I hear you, and I heard your response, but I'm done talking about it now. And when we can talk about something else that's more fun, then let's have a conversation. But the trick to all of this is being that calm, right? Not entering into the chaos with them. And so a lot of times, kids they'll try and take control back, and even getting us all worked up or frustrated, or getting us to yell or stomp, or just even say, I can't deal with you anymore. Like they're like, ding, 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 ding. I just regained control. And so it's one of those things like, and I actually have used this term where I say, I try and go overtly calm so that I can remain that calm. And when I'm calm and I don't give them a whole lot of language around, I'm not trying to explain my reason, I'm not trying to defend myself, I'm just saying, I know, I hear you, I know this is tough. And it just doesn't give them much to go on, and pretty soon they'll learn really quick, like, okay, when mom or dad, they start saying, you know what, I love you too much to argue about this, that just means that I'm game over. We're not doing it. Or you can just say, honey, you've asked and I've answered. And and you can do that, and you can do that all night long. That doesn't take any energy at all. So it's hard. It's very different than probably how most of us were raised. But really, this not arguing really teaches children that you are in charge, but in a really calm way. And it also helps them learn responsibility, meaning like, you're not going to start, they can't blame other people. They're not, like, they've got to own it. If you set that limit, then they've got to accept it. And that is accepting responsibility. So, and I love my little asterisk down there. It says, you are not required to attend every argument you've been invited to. And our kids will love to do that. They will love to just pull us into kind of their little storm. And it's okay to just sit by them, but you don't have to enter into the storm. You can be their rock, so that they can go through their storm and then know that you're still there and you're still connected. So I found this quote that I really wanted to share with everyone. It says, one day your child will make a mistake, and we know that they will, or a bad choice, and they'll run to you instead of running away from you. And in that moment, you'll know the immense value of peaceful, positive, respectful parenting. And that's really our goal, right? Like, all of you guys, and some of you might already have teenagers, but like for you guys that have little kids, they're all going to be teenagers one day. And that's when the real life learning happens. And so we want them, when they're, coming to us because there's issues of drinking or vaping or any host of things that are going on, we really want them coming to you as the guidance for what to do in those situations, and that they know that they will get heard and valued, and that but they'll also get sound advice. So that's our goal. So I'm going to do one more poll, and so my goal is for you guys to just think about 3 of these. I know there was a lot of information, but just think of 3 of them that you'd like to focus on, and then start, right? And it's not going to go smoothly, right? So, pick 3 that really resonate with you. And then, in a week or 2, if you're kind of like, I thought choices were going to be awesome, but I found that to be too difficult, throw that one out, add in another one, and keep trying. And again, like I always say to parents, I'm like, working with you and your family and your kiddos, like every kiddo is so different. It's like a little bit like throwing spaghetti against the wall, and whatever sticks, you keep it, and what doesn't, you put it, let it go, and then fill it in with something else. So, if you guys are always trying new things, then you'll always be growing and changing, which will then keep pace with your forever growing and changing child. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. So I'm going to launch this poll real quick. If you guys can pick 3, and then let me see. Okay, we got some responses here. Oh my goodness. Oh, I was going to say, we're like almost dead even on so many of them. We'll give everyone just a couple minutes here, because you got to pick 3. All right, we got our top ones that are coming in. Let's see here. So the don't arguing one definitely got a lot of people picked that one. So that's good. So hopefully people feel like there's some good, and actually I think on one of the handouts there's some additional suggestions for that. Another one is the praise to positively and specifically praising your child. Quality time. I do hope everyone really takes a look at that. It's such a big bang for your buck, truly. Like, and I know right now, like time is, we are so jammed because you're trying to be sometimes the teacher and the homeschooler and the worker and the mom and the husband and the wife and the everything. But it really is such a good bang for your buck. So the quality time, if you can take a peek at that and see if that will positively impact your family dynamic. Patience, self-control, and problem solving, big one. So, and then also be sad, not mad, and an emotional coach too. Got quite a bit. So, yeah, that's awesome. It's great. Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Amy, we have a question here, and I'll read it to you. I would love to get your advice on how to talk to smaller children. Specifically, these ages are 4 and 6 years old, about the current political climate, especially around race.
Yes. So, yes, we could do a whole webinar on that. But I actually did listen to a webinar recently, and there are some really great books out. And it is, I think it's called like how, it's a whole series, and it's by a gentleman, and he was actually on the webinar, but it was how to talk to your kids about, and he has all different kinds of books, like about race, about mental health, about bullying, about all different kinds of things, but they're kid related. And so I would Google some of that. I think for 4 and 6 year olds, there are some really great books out there, and those will just start to open up some conversations about it. And one of the things I learned in that webinar, and I'm sad because my kids are so much older now, and I feel like I wish I could go back and do that time, but it's so great to just start conversations about, kids in school, or just differences like across everything, not necessarily even race, just differences, and how do we embrace that. But there are some really good kids books out there, and for 4 and 6 year olds, I think that's a great place to start.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes. Does anyone else have any questions they want to type into the Q&A? In the meantime, a few people have asked about handouts. So if you click on the description of the session, the last sentence of that has a link to the handouts, and I was told they're also on your homepage.
Oh, cool.
Okay, we have another question here. Probably time for one more. We are struggling with a natural consequence for our 6-year-old, and they are hitting when they are mad. Do you have any advice?
Sure. Yeah. So hitting is it's a very impulsive thing that kiddos do, particularly when they're mad, because they just don't have that self restraint. So there's a lot of, I don't really know what the situation is, if they're hitting you or if they're hitting siblings or so forth. Um, there's another gal that I follow a lot, who is from Denver. She's not writing anymore, but she would implement, if you hit, you sit. So it didn't have to necessarily be a big full blown timeout or a big punishment. It's just like, ooh, we don't hit in this family, hit, you sit. And it just can be just that timeout to just take the edge off, right? The other thing is, if you can notice when things are starting to escalate and use some of that, I notice that like start to really notice what happens with your 6-year-old before they actually hit, and start to cue in with them about that. Like, I notice that you're clenching your fists, and if as the parent, like as soon as they start doing that, like fists are gonna fly, then try and watch for those cues so that you can start to give them let's go take some deep breaths. And 6-year-olds are awesome for, they're not going to take deep breaths very good, but if you could get some bubbles, if you could get a windmill or whatever those little blower mill things are, just something so that they can start to have a productive coping skill around this big reaction that they're having. It's very common for, at 6, we should start getting out of hitting. We shouldn't be hitting as much. So we just want to really start to look for triggers and see if we can recognize ways to stop it before it actually happens. But if they hit and we can say a blanket statement, there's no spanking going on in the house and we're not hitting each other and it's not okay for you to hit us. You say, our rule is you hit, you sit, and that's the rule. And I'll sit with you. I mean, I'm not, they don't have to be punished and put away in a room all by themselves, but we just got to take that time out because we don't hit in this family, right?
All right. It looks like I'm just looking through the chat here, and I apologize. I was given the wrong eval survey, so please disregard that link. That survey was for the Teen Brain presentation. So, well, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Amy, for your presentation. It was wonderful, and I hope everyone got a lot out of it. Appreciate your questions and everything. So at this point, we are done. Make sure to stop by the expo hall here at the conference, the virtual conference, and you can learn and connect more with all of the community partners involved. And right now, actually starting at 8:30 to 9, there is the session that you can ask additional questions and connect with presenters. So I encourage you to participate in that too if you have some time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do I stop this now?
Yes.